Welcome to Edmonds this week. Today is Monday, November 10th, and this is going to be part two of my general election specific to Edmonds update for you. So, not too much has changed since the first reaction, but there has been some developments that I think is really interesting. But also, we're going to do a little bit of a dive. I won't call it a deep dive, but we're going to do a little bit of a dive into the numbers. And that'll make sense in just a few minutes. But first, let's go into where we are right now as of 5 p.m. today, where Snohomish County has done their update for the day. So, of course, we had 3 city council spots open for election. Two of those spots have been retained by the people that are currently in those spots. So, Chris Eck and Will Chen. And then Erica Barnett was in the open spot because Neil Tippett was not running again. And she edged out Alex Newman. No, there's something interesting about this dynamic, and I've already got a couple of emails about it even right before I went to start recording this, where people were asking me, what do you think happened with certain people in the election, specifically around Alex? How come Chris got it but not Alex? And one of the things I learned, especially when I was running, a few times that I have run, is that even when you run as a ticket, it can be really interesting to see what that end result is, because you would think, okay, if you're running as a ticket and people are coming to you at your joint events and saying, hey, yep, I'm going to vote for both of you, but yet the numbers don't match. They don't match. So and that goes both ways, right? With Chris retaining her spot, you would think if you're running as a ticket and people are saying, hey, I'm going to vote for the Dems and this and that and the other, but there was still a gap between the number of people that voted for Chris versus those that voted for Alex. Same thing on the Erica Barnett and Glenda Crowell side, right? They were running together, but again, when the numbers start to come out, this makes you go, what happened here? And I still don't know the answer to that. I mean, I have my suspicions. I think it just depends. The one time I ran where it was like a kind of a, running tandem thing, which I was really not a fan of anyway. Again, the numbers spoke. It's like you can say, oh, I'm a hardcore Dem, blah, blah, blah. But yet those numbers didn't match up at the election box. And the same thing on the other side too. So it makes you go, okay, I got to make sure that I'm running on my platform and not trying to think, oh, collectively we're going to do this together. I'm just saying. There was also some commentary around Will, right? Because Jessica Bachman, pulled out of the race, not too long past the primary, but it was also too late for her name to come off of the ballot. So she still ended up getting like 11% of the vote. And some people are like, oh my God, are people so ignorant that they didn't even know? It's like, I don't necessarily think that's purely the case. And as I commented on a local board, earlier today, I was like, there is also something called a protest vote. How many times do people write in a name? You've probably done it at one occasion. So it could be the same thing with this. It's like if people are like, oh, I don't want Will, but he's probably going to get it anyway. So either they're going to write in a name or they're going to still choose Jessica, even though they know that technically she's not running anymore. But again, I will say congratulations to everyone that has run. Not necessarily won, but run, because it is a lot of work. It's a lot of dedication. It's a lot of giving up your time, your privacy, that people automatically think now they're entitled to all of your time and energy, whether you're sitting out having dinner with your family or just trying to enjoy a show. It's not for the weak of heart. So thank you to everyone that ran. We'll also just touch a minute on the Port of Edmonds and the Edmonds School District. Again, I really just kind of focused in this case on those that had an opponent. So Janelle retained her spot on the Port of Edmonds. And then Tom, who was recently appointed into that role in time to now run for it, also retained his spot and by a significant number. So again, congrats to the both of you and everyone that ran in general. I didn't really want to talk about this one, and for one main reason is that Charter Review Commission, I put in my name for it, so and a few others, and I really did not want to utilize this platform to promote my campaign, and I didn't do that. Now, I'm fine with that. But this story came up post-election day, and it's really interesting because I didn't know about this 10 years ago. So for Charter Review Commission, it's a 1-year term, and it only comes up every 10 years. And so this is one of the very few roles that comes up where you're asked to vote for 3 people. It came out from the elections board that about 80% of those who voted in this particular election for this particular spot only picked one person. So again, sometimes you can say it's a protest vote, so yeah, maybe I'll just pick one because I don't really like anybody else. But when it's 80%, that's a bigger deal. And I ended up posting on my social media, it's like, hey, this happened, it's starting to make the news. Hopefully none of you were caught up in that. And I was actually surprised by the number of people that confessed that, yes, they were one of those people that didn't realize that it was 3 people instead of 1. Now, yes, were there things all over the ballot and the envelope that said vote for 3? Yes. Again, sometimes people just go into autopilot and just one. You think it's the same thing all the time. And I saw some people commenting and bashing people saying, it's clearly there. Again, what does that do? It doesn't do anything to try to make somebody feel like they're unintelligent. That's just not what I like to do, and I'm not going to do that here. But as you see the undervotes, 31,000 in D3, another 30-something thousand in all the districts. There were 5 districts total. So right now it's looking like there's over 100,000 what they're calling undervotes because people undervoted the amount that they could have. Now, there was a question that came out that said, hey, does my 1 vote still count? It absolutely does. It just means that whoever wins and or doesn't win, that may have been dictated by the fact that almost 80% of the people only voted for 1 instead of 3. So it could have worked out a different way. I didn't win based on these numbers. I'm fine with that. There's a lot of other stuff going on. I was just happy to throw my hat in the ring. And again, for those who did vote for me with no promotion whatsoever, I am heartened. So thank you, 8,612 people and counting that did that. It is not a wasted vote. I completely appreciate it. Now let's talk about Prop 1. So again, it's still been kind of holding at that kind of 60-40 split. No, it's going to definitely pass. I think there's no coming back from this. But there's one, again, the undervotes are relatively low. So again, you can kind of see how significant that undervote number is between whatever the different things you're voting on are for. This was one of the races in the past few years that I publicly said something about how I felt about it. And I gave my reasons, so I don't need to go into there. But I will say this, and this is more of a marketing thing. Because part of voting, part of elections is marketing. If someone tells you it's not, they're lying to you. There is a marketing element to this. And so one of the things I did say, even before I shared which way I was going to go with this, is I tried to give a little input advice for what it's worth to both sides. I was like, if you're on the yes side, you might want to do this. If you're on the no side, you might want to do this. But again, just one person's opinion. But one of the things I did say is that you have to know your audience, which means that if you're kind of glossing over the impacts on the older population in Edmonds, and again, this is a no-win proposition. It was someone's going to suffer one way or the other, especially with everything else that's happening in this country, in this state, in this county, in this city. There's just a lot going on. So talking about raising taxes for anything is not going to go over swimmingly one way or the other. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen with you because I want to do a little bit of data diving. So, and I'm also hoping to justify my reasoning for saying that narrative or with the older population was super important. So on this Snohomish County elections website, excuse me, there's this election data dashboard on the main page. And there's a couple of pages I want to get into. Excuse me. So you can see what I'm talking about. So first of all, again, this is county level. Excuse me. So Of the 541,440 people that are active registered voters, only this many showed up to vote. 191,000, almost 192,000. And there's all these statistics, and I invite you to come to this website and come and look at this information for yourself and kind of do your own level of deep dive if you want to. But there's two things on here that I want to kind of show to you. So first is the detailed summary. And again, this is a page I've shared with you on previous podcasts. Again, we're working with that same county level number. And I already said on a number of occasions that if you look at ballot returns by age, 65 and older make up the largest block. Then the next largest block is the age group below them, 55 to 64, and so on and so on and so on. And again, we talk about the ballot returns by method. The vast majority were drop box. A little bit was by mail. And then others usually dropping off at the county, and it's a very small percentage. But I want to look at these top 5 ballot drop boxes by returns. And Edmonds is usually number 1. And in this case, excuse me, it's 12,208, right? But if I click on that, it goes here. So now we can see that 12,208, right? Just from Dropbox alone. But if we were to follow kind of tradition here on if it's going to be kind of the same thing, even if you factored in the people that actually mailed it in through USPS, it's probably going to still hold the same. And that trajectory is still there. Now, here's where, again, I think it was kind of lost on people. The 65 and up group is 5,318 of that 12,1208. The next group down is 2,155. So those that are aged 55 and up made up 61% of the total votes. 61%. So out of 12,208, 7,473 of those 12,208 were 55 and up. That's who needed to be convinced. Because as much as you have the younger generations talking about why yes is important and why you should vote there, if you're not turning up, it's not going to matter. So I just want you guys to just kind of go back in here and just look through here yourself. Again, I think some of this is fascinating to look at. But here's also a somewhat good note. The last is the traditional report. And it kind of breaks down the number of voters in each of these areas and towns, number of returned ballots, and the percentages returned. But if we sort this by, come on, there we go. Port of Edmonds and City of Edmonds has one of the highest turnouts beyond Fire District 27 in the town of Index. But again, you got to look at it in perspective too to how many voters there are. So out of Port of Edmonds, there were 15,945 voters. 10,102 of them voted. Yay. So that came out to just over 63%. But for all the City of Edmonds, 31,875. 18,522 of us turned in our ballots for 58.11%. So out of some of the larger-ish cities in Snohomish County, per usual, which I think is actually a good thing, we had one of the highest turnouts. So, but we need to get those numbers up. So if you've gotten anything from this podcast today, is look at the numbers, respect the numbers. Market and pitch, knowing what those numbers are, but also it's a continued flag, a continued opportunity to get younger people in our city to vote. Talking about it and pushing something out there, but not actually doing the voting, it's going to hurt you. So take with that information what you will. It's just what it is. It's just fact. It's not me just spitting off. Here is the data. Here's the numbers. Go to the Snohomish County website and dig into those things. So the election should be certified in the next few days. I used to know the date off the top of my head. But I think pretty much anything that's going to happen voting wise has happened. So again, congrats to everyone that ran. Congrats to those that won. And for those of you who didn't win, don't see it as a loss, but see it as an opportunity. Take a break, get some you time for yourself, do whatever you need to do with that. And then use what you learned over the past few months in running to say, hey, how do I want to continue to contribute to Edmonds in some form, shape, or fashion? Or you have free will and say, I'm done. So I respect any of the decisions that are going to be made around that. So with that, thanks so much. Try to keep this a little bit short. Hopefully, again, you got some news out of this or some details that maybe you didn't have before that you might find useful. And again, I always invite you to go to the Snohomish County website yourself, dig into what you see there, go see what other races have done and kind of what those numbers and percentages are. And hopefully it will inspire you to continue to be involved in our community. So with that, thanks so much. Happy Monday. And tomorrow's Veterans Day. So thank you to those we're going to honor tomorrow for serving our country. Take care, everybody.